Rate of return. The cost of sending back illegal immigrants takes its toll on the country's pockets.
Gunned down, 4 people shot overnight, police on the case. And
Judgment Day, an alleged killer learns his fate. The Bahamas Tonight, the National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
The Department of Immigration exhausted its $1.5 million budget for apprehensions in the last calendar year. Good evening, everyone. I'm Charisma Robinson.
And I'm Chris Saunders. Thank you so much for joining us. This announcement comes amidst intensified efforts to enforce immigration laws with the introduction of immigration reform.
Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell outlined the breakdown of the repatriations last evening during debate on the mid-year budget in Parliament. Keisha Adderley reports.
Continually fueled by raging debate, immigration policy with its recent amendments have sparked a new round of controversy. New requirements for admission to school and to acquire work permits have called the legality of the policy into question in some circles, prompting this response from Immigration Minister Fred Mitchell.
Well-known QC who has said to people that they should sue the Bahamas government en masse to bankrupt the government. The question is, are you unwittingly working with these criminal enterprises to swamp the country?
Otherwise, there is much of the same regarding the immigration budget. Again, it's been outstripped by repatriation demands.
Apprehension, interdiction by boat, 1,794. On land, apprehension, mainly Haitian nationals, 3,251. Other nationals, 796. For a total last year of 5,841 souls. Repatriated to Haiti, 3,814. Other nationals, 814, for a total 4,628.
But Minister Mitchell says observers shouldn't be so quick to sympathize with migrants who willingly pay between $1,500 and $5,000 a head for their illegal voyages. And he had this admonition for advocates who are seeking to gain ground with international campaigns.
The accusations of institutional terrorism, ethnic cleansing, and Auschwitz in the Bahamas are unfounded, and they should be withdrawn by these activists. The latest attack was one last week when one of the individuals from the Human Rights Association in Grand Bahama claimed that I am targeting children. Targeting children. That is simply disgraceful on his part. He knows full well that the laws of the Bahamas call for all non-nationals in this country to have a permit to reside here or a work permit. There is no exception for men, women, or children. No pricing has changed. No law has changed, no policy has been changed. We are simply seeking the best way we can to enforce the law.
Minister Mitchell says those raids will continue just as aggressively as immigration has been resolute in the aim to finally change the status quo. Keisha Adderley, ZNS Network News.
The search is still on for 2 suspects tonight, said to be responsible for killing 2 people and sending 2 others to hospital in critical condition. The incident took place in the Plantal Street area last night. In light of this, the police chief expressed concern about the state of crime and this tragic incident.
Commissioner of Police Alison Greenslade says police have had a difficult night in fighting crime. With the murder count already at 20 so far this year, he says the level of crime and violence must stop. Regarding last night's murder investigation, Commissioner Greenslade says so far their investigations have been met with a roadblock.
Those people that committed the crimes last night are still roaming the streets of New Providence. There are members of this community that know exactly where they are. They need to turn them in. We are still begging, let me use the word again, begging members of that community to talk to us. And we haven't had much success. We'll continue to try. We can't work magic. We are only as good as our people allow us to be. Again, I say, if your son or daughter or relative has a gun, an illegal firearm, ammunition, is feuding, you have to tell someone. If you do not wish to speak to law enforcement, then speak to your pastor. Speak to someone that you trust who might bring that information forward, and hopefully we can get ahead of it and prevent what happened last night.
The chief of police said the hemorrhaging must stop.
I've said to all and sundry, anyone that would listen, if we do not stop the hemorrhage, this hemorrhage, we're going to continue to record these kinds of statistics. There are far too many relatively young Bahamian men roaming the streets of New Providence who should be incarcerated. We see these same people over and repeatedly. They are arrested, they are properly processed, and they're back on the streets reoffending. And what is even more interesting, people that are losing their lives likewise have a checkered history of crime. It's very unfortunate.
Commissioner Greenslade is appealing to residents to do the right thing. Primarily, call the police to report any criminal activity.
Again, I say, if your son or daughter or relative has a gun, an illegal firearm, ammunition, is feuding, you have to tell someone. If you do not wish to speak to law enforcement, then speak to your pastor. Speak to someone that you trust who might bring that information forward, and hopefully we can get ahead of it and prevent what happened last night.
Carla Palmer, ZNS Network News.
A number of police officers turned out to pay respects to one of their own. The body of fallen police constable Latario Demerit is lying in the Paul Farquharson Center at police headquarters. He died in a traffic accident 2 weeks ago. It was a solemn occasion as his family looked on. Demerit was saluted by his colleagues of the elite SWAT team. He was pinned for a final time with a gold medal of honor. Commissioner of Police Allison Greenslade called it a tremendous loss for the force.
We respect his legacy of honesty, a courageous legacy, one laced with integrity and loyalty, a decent young man. There are many of our officers that do not fall, that do not fall into that category. They've let us down. This young man was blazing a trail. The public, far and wide, loved him dearly. You see from the turnout this morning, tremendous support for this fallen comrade. Words are insufficient to thank this young officer and his family for the countless sacrifices that he has made, that they have made. We, as a grateful force, and certainly by extension a grateful nation, can never ever repay the debt that we owe to him. And we pray God's richest mercies on his soul.
A man on trial for allegedly killing a Bertha Go-Go Ribs employee 6 years ago learned his fate today. Fern Carey was in court when the verdict was handed down.
The last remaining defendant on trial for the murder and armed robbery of Bertha's Go-Go Ribs employee Nelson Samuel Goodman back in September of 2009 walked free Tuesday. This after a 4-man, 8-woman jury deliberated for just over 2 hours and found the accused, Wade Roll, not guilty of murder by a count of 11-1 and not guilty of robbing the deceased of $200 by a count of 9-3. Roll's former co-defendants, Leonardo Wright and David Roll, were acquitted last Thursday after Justice Vera Watkins ordered jurors to find them not guilty of murder and not guilty of armed robbery due to a lack of evidence. Roll appeared relieved as he left court, telling reporters that he was falsely accused. Attorney Lizaya Roll agreed.
The only evidence that came forward would have been in the form of a confession statement, which our client said that he gave after he was badly beaten by the police. This was absolutely the only piece of evidence that allegedly connected our client with the scene and the commission of the offense. And clearly the jury did not buy that.
Now we spoke to the prosecution, who said they had a lot of challenges in this case, including the fact that many of the witnesses did not want to come forward to testify, which made it difficult to present all of the evidence to the jury. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
Legalizing marijuana is not something that will materialize anytime soon in this country. Jamaican officials, on the anniversary of Bob Marley's birthday on February 6, decriminalized possession of small amounts of marijuana for personal use. Having up to 2 ounces will only attract a penalty of a ticket and not jail time. This was something recently posed to the Minister of National Security, Dr. Bernard Nottage, as to whether it's something the Bahamas would similarly consider implementing. He said it's not something up for consideration at this time, but it's something people in the community are thinking about.
We do know that there are a lot of people who are imprisoned for quantities of marijuana. Some people suggest that where it is not with intent to supply, but just small portions of marijuana, perhaps the better thing to do would be to institute these drug courts, which some countries have, where we bring them before the court. If they plead guilty, they are not imprisoned, they are put on a sort of probation. They have to submit themselves to counseling. If they are young people who do not have skills, they submit themselves to some kind of skills training, and we try to get them ready for the workplace. That is one suggestion that we have been considering for small quantities of marijuana, but I don't think anybody is considering legalizing any quantities of marijuana at this time.
Hugh Campbell tips off. We have all the highlights coming up in ZNS Total Sports. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This segment of the news is brought to you by Shell Quality Fuels.